want to do today? I want to talk to you about bibs, mostly because they were due today, the first round. I kind of have two goals in mind. Number one, generally speaking, the way we talk about these bibs, we're still going to talk about argument. We're going to do some stuff on the board with answering that big question, what does any of this say about us as a people, society, a culture, right? We got to keep doing reps on that. But also, I know that some of you probably aren't super comfortable with the assignment, are in some headspace of what the hell are we supposed to do. So we're going to talk about that today as well, okay? Because you owe me another round of bibs for next time. Yeah, so that's what we're doing. Anyway, I sent you an email maybe an hour ago. Time is hard for me. Should be near the top of your inbox if you would please open that. This is somebody's bib. They're talking about a guy named Shane Dawson, who of course I've never heard of, but I assume some of you have. I guess what we're going to do, because these are a little bit short, and we'll talk about that as well at some point. Go ahead and read both, because they kind of work well together. And then we're gonna talk about it. So take a couple minutes, read over that. We'll come back. Do I need more time? Cool. All right. To begin with, generally, because I looked up these sources too, there's actually not a lot to summarize, because the articles are short, which actually might tell us something, and we can talk about that perhaps later. But that is to say, they're pretty easy to summarize. I don't think we have to talk about them too much. I think we can all follow those. So mainly, I wanted to try to get the evidence up here from those bibs, okay? The first bib, I feel like was pretty easy, again, to sum up in terms of the evidence. It's J. Din, right? Like, not J. Duff. I couldn't remember. The all caps response, how dare you sexualize my sister, which is like, how brave. Okay. And then the other one is from this Dawson fellow, who's like, I'm sorry that I did that. Okay. The other evidence we have is more interesting, I think. It's more nuanced. Nuance means, well, in a way it is. Nuance means like there's black and white, but then there's shades of gray. That's where nuance lives, right? So they tell us that it's a former fan, so they're going to have a certain opinion, probably, right? If you're a former fan of somebody. That first quotation, because they're both from this person. What's the general sense of that quotation? What are they saying about this Dawson character? Another way to put it, to your mind, you go back and read that quotation, what's some of the more interesting elements from it. They say one thing in particular that honestly is why I picked this bib. I was like, oh. I'm just curious what you guys think.
You're talking about the J.
Huh?
You're talking about the J glove?
In the second bib, at the bottom, we have two quotations from a former fan. The first one begins, as a viewer. I'm just curious. It's a long-ish quotation for our purposes, but there's something, there's a particular detail we could for sure talk about. And I'm just curious if you guys see it. What's worth quoting in this quotation? There's one thing in particular that's pretty good, pretty rich.
Love that person more so you have to forgive them?
No, unfortunately. I mean, that's interesting. I would put that as like 1B to the 1A we're looking at. Because that's for sure kind of putting words in somebody's mouth, which is again, interesting. But it's this other thing that is really made me go, wow, honestly.
Is it that, like, they said he'll always be that person?
Yeah. I want to get it right. He's not acknowledging that he is that person. He always will be, even if he's changed. And I was like, that is a wild piece of logic. You will always be that person, even if you've changed. It's like, what? What? That's worth talking about. That is a very interesting oxymoron, to be totally honest with you. So maybe I'll sum it up like that. Does anybody know what this means, by the way? You may have heard it before. An oxymoron. Like the word bittersweet. If you ever think about that for half a second, you're like, what? Those are opposite things. How can they exist together? Like, it's an oxymoronic idea. It seems to contradict itself. The other quotation, where this person says, his videos don't do nearly as well, according to fans, are just as offensive as his old content was. I guess we could best sum that up as it's kind of the gist, right? Okay. Now, importantly, they're saying that in a couple different ways. Now then, what we first have to do, because I assume there's at least a couple people in here, like myself, who had no idea whatever the hell they're talking about. Somebody fill us in. What are all these people talking about? What happened? Does nobody know? Because that would blow my mind a little bit.
Shane Dawson has a just really long list of bad things, but
well, but this rightly, if we're talking about what we need to do in the paper, this is hyper-focused on one controversial episode in this guy's YouTube career, right?
are you sexualizing Jacob Smith?
When she was apparently 11. Okay. That's pretty gross. Like again, part of my favorite part of this first quotation is like, again, how brave, like, to come out against, like, yeah, sure, man, okay, we don't need the all caps. But anyway, anything else? Well, I guess I'll give this to you, to be honest with you. The most interesting aspect to me, and it doesn't get talked about in these bibs, I just want to point it out to you because it happens a lot. He did do this thing, and I had to work hard to find any article mentioning when it happened. What I mean is, this whole thing happened in like 2020 or something, right? Fairly recently. The video they're referencing is almost 10 years old. That's interesting. And it's something that we do a lot. Like it basically, somebody found it. Somebody dug it up from the depths of the past and said, you did this X amount of years ago, now we're going to talk about it. Which is interesting. This idea that, like, you can't outrun your past in some way, right? That's at least worth considering in this particular case. Not all people that you do. A lot of the time when somebody does something, we catch them right then, right? But this is somebody researched it, basically. I'm going to put it under evidence. I mean, it's like a detail of the story, but okay. So I'm curious. We have to start this way, and then we'll actually get into the. What do you guys think? Just about any of this? Does somebody want to take a stand against sexualizing 11-year-olds? Do you want to be brave real quick? I'm having a little bit of fun because I think Jade Smith's an idiot, but you know. But you're kind of allowed to be when you have millions of dollars. You can be a moron. What do you guys think about any of this? Do we hate the Shane Dawson guy? Are we there? I don't know him. I have no feelings. I'm asking. What do you guys think?
It's just another one of those kind of redundant going after somebody for kind of minor stuff. I mean that, yeah, but
Well, again, it's gross.
yeah, for sure.
And the way they talk about him, because again, I'm coming from a place of ignorance. Like I don't know. I've never heard this person before. It sounds like he has a bit of a history.
He allegedly did something with a cat.
Okay.
Yeah. Just like,
That's not a good sentence.
Yeah.
To allegedly do anything with, it's not good.
But
But what's weird here, to tie it into conversations we've been having about other people, it sounds at least a little bit like this kind of behavior is on brand for this guy. Is that fair?
yeah.
Okay. So his brand is gross, controversial, some people would say unacceptable, I suppose, right? It sounds like anyway. Well, it seems like too, and I'm tripping my way through not knowing things, so you guys gotta help me out. It sounds like for years and years he got rewarded for that behavior, right? Like he was encouraged to do these things just by way of accumulating fans, right? Like, so that's kind of what I'm getting at. It's weird to me that I'm not saying any of us in this room, but we as a people, right, would support somebody in doing whatever madness it sounds like this guy was doing for a long time, and then someone will go back and say, you remember when you did this? And he's like, yeah, a lot of people dug it. Well, no more. Now you're terrible. Like that's weird. And I mean weird like in a good way, in a helpful way, that we should be interested in, right? Because again, I think that's a thing that we do a lot. So that's on the table. I want us thinking about that. Beyond that, I am curious. We can go to some of the evidence now. We have Jade's opinion. We have Shane Dawson's apology. And you can go back and look at any of this. It should be in front of you. And then we have the ex-fan saying you're always going to be that person no matter what, essentially. And also you suck. Because people don't like you anymore and you're still offensive, according to this fan. What do you guys think about any of that evidence? Does any of it strike you as something we can maybe talk about in this paper, we could use? Does it remind you of anything you're working on, potentially? We're talking about fan opinion, we're talking about a YouTube personality having to, well, I don't know if they have to or not, but feeling they have to apologize, right? The Bib mentions that we have a reaction to that. Now, we don't get it in the article, but I kind of feel like we could assume what that reaction is, you know? And to be fair, we kind of get it in the next article, I think, from the former fan. What do you guys think the response is to his apology? Especially based on what the former fan says.
Everybody thought it was kind of disingenuous.
They don't buy it. Why do you think that is? Like, look, half my job is to always play devil's advocate because I'm trying to push you guys and make you think about things. But to be honest with you, like most of the time, I try to give people benefit of the doubt. And I read his apology in the Bib, and I also looked it up a little bit. Not knowing anything about the guy, right? So that is important. it felt genuine to me. Like, it felt like a dude trying to apologize for doing fucked up shit.
But whenever it's your 18th apology,
He does it a lot.
yeah, it starts to lose its sincerity.
Okay. That's interesting. And my sinuses are also interesting. I apologize. Okay. So he also has a history of doing things and then apologizing for them.
Yeah, that's what kind of that mainstream YouTube culture is.
Do I know?
That's what that mainstream YouTube culture is they fuck up, they apologize, get really famous, and then kind of die back down until the next thing comes out.
Well, so look, we need to talk about this then. Part of this has to be a consideration of the genre, right? Because all these are different. If you go back to our last paper, podcasts are different from late night news comedy shows, right? This is a genre. Controversial YouTube vloggers, I guess.
I will say, especially in his Shane Dawson's realm, you have like in the past like year.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody else in here watches, or I personally don't, but they might know James Charles, Jeffree Star, like those kind of they're like makeup guru people.
Okay. But so they have like a cohort of.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
And they're all like related, and they've done like collabs and whatnot, but they all each have their own repetitive fuck up, apologize.
Like this arc that
Yeah.
well, it's interesting too, because like you say like they're buddies or they collaborate or whatever, you would have to think on some level if their content is similar, they would share fans, you know what I mean? Or think the kind of people that watch that person's stuff might also like mine, so we should, right? But okay, let's. And we really don't use the term vlogger very much anymore, so I'm just going to say personalities. Which I think is actually better, because that is, if you're a fan of these people, that tends to be, you're interested in their persona, like whatever you think they are in these videos, that's why people will watch them, right? But we also watch because of that, like we're fans of this courting of controversy, if that makes sense. Why do you guys think that is? Like, we're gonna get to all this, but we gotta do a little bit of work first. Why do you think these guys are wildly popular? The only one I've ever heard of, and you guys will laugh, probably for reasons that aren't even clear to me, but I've heard of PewDiePie. I've heard of that person. And I know apparently he did some stuff he shouldn't have, but but he's got like millions of followers, right?
100 million.
That's a lot. When I was a kid, the population of America was like 120 million. So that's a lot. God damn. Why do you think this stuff is so popular? Or even if it's not super popular, because I'm sure there's people out there doing really screwed up stuff that have like 5 followers. But they got followed, like people want to see it. Like why do you think that is? It's kind of weird, right?
I think personally,
Uh-huh.
I hate to keep talking, but
You're the only one. You and all, both the Austins today.
shut up. I think personally, what makes it so interesting is like it then becomes this sort of reality TV thing, but it's not scripted and it's real people. So it's like it's just more raw, more entertaining whenever they do mess up, because you know that it holds a little bit more weight than it would on.
It's got real stakes.
Yeah.
If somebody screws up on Saved by the Bell, you know Zach's going to figure it out by the end. I don't know if you guys even get that reference.
Sure.
It's a show that we went on. All right, so you raise an interesting point, though. These days, look, reality TV was invented when I was a kid. Like, Real World and all that shit was invented when I was a kid. And it, grew in popularity through the years. But you're kind of saying, we're at the point, especially with, YouTube was actually also invented when I was a kid, which is a weird thing to say. But you're kind of making the point, we've moved beyond reality TV. Like even that idea, that term, those shows are scripted to a large degree. they're closer, if you're familiar at all with professional wrestling, right? Like, people really get thrown around, people can really get hurt, but they talk about it beforehand. They're like, all right, and then you're gonna throw me, and I'm gonna talk about your wife, and you're gonna, right? Like, they work it out. It's scripted to look real. What you're kind of saying is, we are so sophisticated as an audience, at least in this one respect, that I hate to put it this way, but like, we see through the bullshit. We recognize when it's scripted, and that bothers us. We want something at least more real. So this desired reality slash, unscripted. And importantly, the last thing you said, I want to talk about that for just a moment. Real stakes. Again, so like, I'm sure you have a movie you've liked or a show you were into, and you follow those characters, and I'm not saying you don't care, but if you stop for 5 seconds, you go, well, there's an actor. I mean, it's not, Tony Stark doesn't really die. That would be a wild movie, right? If it killed the actor. But in this, if Shane Dawson does a thing, or some other person, they could really upset people. They could, internet fails have been around forever. They could really get hurt. Any of these things. They have real consequences. We like that for some reason. Even if these people are kind of terrible. Why do you think that is? That's a weird thing. That's a super recent thing, which means it falls within our purview, right? It says something about us that we like this. Think about all the popular shows on TV. First of all, it's mostly sports, which most people will tell you are unscripted. Some people will tell you that they're scripted. But, and then reality TV, which is as close as you can get to YouTube on TV, right? People handing each other roses and shit like that. Why do you guys think that is? Why are we so hungry as a society for real stakes, unscripted? Why do you guys like it? I imagine most of you do, right? You're watching YouTube, or you're watching one of The Bachelors, or whatever other show. I don't know. But I know they exist.
I feel like every show has a loser, right? Like, normally there's a premise where they are either competing or getting some end goal, and you lose people along the way, right?
Yeah.
Like a Big Brother or
Yeah.
Survivor, like those are reality, right?
Yeah.
So, kind of like some of those games or those shows, you kind of, I don't know, there's some sort of struggle or competition.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that'd be part of it.
I don't know, it's a very loaded question.
Well, it's meant to be hard. It's about you guys, though. Might it also be that these real stakes that you're describing again sort of invite real drama? Like, there's this old idea that you really don't know a person until you see them in a tight spot, or you see them at their lowest, right? That's when you kind of find out more about who a person really is, type of thing. If that's the case, I mean, it often can be. Still, the question is like, why do you guys think we're so hungry for this real drama as opposed to scripted, right? With like actors and lights and stuff. Like, we want to see people either really do well or really not, but just the fact, like, what matters to us is that it's real. To me, go ahead.
It's more like immersive to the viewers.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm gonna try to help you guys out a little bit. When you're hungry for something, when you want something very badly, that implies there's a deficit. That implies you're missing something. And you're trying to compensate for that. You're trying to fill some kind of hole. I have to eat a bar before class or else my stomach will get very loud, right? Like things like this. As a people, a society, a culture, what do you think What would you hypothesize we might be missing so much that we go out looking for unscripted drama, like real stakes? What don't we have? Or what don't we have enough of, maybe, would be a better question, do you think?
Entertainment,
Uh-huh.
or wanting to be attached to something, or like feel like you're a part of something and follow it, you know what I mean?
Okay.
You can follow the drama over a certain amount of time, like as far as the show goes, and then whenever it's over, then
I mean, you could do that with old shows, right?
I guess so.
But I mean, the second one, because entertainment, we get to agree. But the second one in particular, wanting to be a part of something, wanting to follow something, is there a way to talk about that in terms of follow something that's real, as opposed to, again, follow something that's scripted? Like, what is it about the real thing that makes us want to know these people more, to feel connected more? Like, why do you?
I like more relatability. You feel like you can, I don't know, I guess it just corresponds more in real life than it does. It feels like it's just made to fit your needs, you know, made to entertain you, instead of actually genuinely entertaining you because I don't know.
No, that's good. That's good. So you're in some ways bringing this back around, right? But you're kind of talking about it like, right? Prepackaged entertainment equals some kind of a false connection. You probably do feel for certain characters. If you've been ever really into a movie or a show, especially a show, if it goes on for a bunch of seasons, you're like, oh, I hope, whatever, right? Like you feel connected to those people, but you're kind of saying, we as people, society, and culture, to a degree, have started to kind of feel this way. And so we still want this, but we want it to be more real at the very least. That suggests to me that this is what we're missing. That like, but basically a shot at some kind of an argument would be, in 2022, we as a people, struggle with disconnection, with not feeling like we're a part of something, whatever that might be. And so we go out looking, and sometimes we find idiots, right? And we support them, because at least we feel like, because when I looked up the Shane Dawson apology video, they all have the same, it's right in his face, like uncomfortably so. Almost like he grabbed you by the shoulders and was like, I'm sorry. And you're like, good God, like it's right here. But if that's intimate, right? You don't get that close to somebody unless you know them or they want you to know them, right? Like it's always, but that's what we're talking about. You want to feel that closeness and you want it to feel real, which again suggests to me that we don't have those real connections as much. That's the beginning of an argument right there for why anybody is even into this idiot, because he does sound like an idiot. Cool. Well, now we can take that, kind of keep it in our back pocket. We can think about these things. What time is it, by the way? I have no clock. I can't see that.
10:01.
Sweet. We can just go down the list, I suppose. Let's talk about Jade in all caps. I sum it up as all caps because, to me, and we're different generations, but to me, all caps is a move, is a rhetorical technique. It basically means you're standing on a chair shouting. Like that's what all caps is. And so when you do that, it's a hard sell for me. But you guys may read it differently. What does he say in that quotation? What's he say? We can sum it up pretty easily, I think.
He was disgusted because his sister, who was 11, was sexualized and it wasn't funny.
Good. What about that? I feel like the student points out that like this essentially sums up a lot of people's position, you know. So okay, so we need to think about it. To have that position that like you should not do that. What do you guys think? Not one of the Austins. Let's play a fun game for 1 second. I'll make it multiple choice. Should you or should you not sexualize 11-year-olds? Take your time.
You shouldn't.
You shouldn't?
You shouldn't.
Okay, you gotta be real clear with that last part.
I don't want to. No, you should not.
Yeah.
Pretty easy question.
It is. It is. It is. That's interesting to me. Like, I would never say that it's not worth saying. It's worth saying. Especially if it's your sister, you know, get all that. But it is interesting. Like, I'll put it to you this way. The interesting aspect of this is not that people don't think you should sexualize 11-year-olds. We got that. It'd be more interesting if people were like, do it. That'd be wild. We would have officially stepped into like Mad Max territory of people. Like, that's different. But what's interesting is that everyone was like, yeah, more of saying the thing that we all agree. Like, that's a mechanism that we have. Oliver calls it piling on, right? We do that. We do want to chime in, hard agree publicly, you know? So let's think about that. Again, not the fact that Jaden said this, but the fact that everyone looked at it and said, I also need to say that. Why do we do that? Because we do. The way you would talk about this classically, this is low-hanging fruit. It's a very easy thing to walk up and go, yeah, we shouldn't talk about fucking kids, you know, like I got it. Why do you think we do that? There could be multiple reasons, you know. Look, some of them are good reasons. Again, some of them are, we should agree to that. That should be a thing we should all be down with. Like, yeah.
Virtue signaling.
There is that. And again, I think I mentioned this last time. I hate how that's been co-opted. It's been taken by certain people, certain entities, and they kind of poisoned it because they'll use it, and it's like, but that's not to say it's not ever valid to think about.
Definitely makes people feel probably a lot better about themselves.
It does, and again, it's because it's weird. Because again, in this case, it should be a virtue that we hold. Like, it should be a thing we can all agree. Don't fuck kids. Yes, for sure. Make T-shirts. But yeah, like, so one idea, they feel better about themselves. Even with that term virtue signaling, it's not just that, it's letting everyone else know that they are sort of in the moral majority, right? Like they're on the right side of this, and you're signaling that, hence the phrase. Why do you think we're doing that with this guy? We just talked about how that's his brand, how he's been doing it for years.
I feel like if you kind of already dislike somebody, which most people don't really like Shane Dawson, I'd say.
Yeah.
You're going to take the easiest way and kind of go at them, which if you said that's like a low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
People are going to take that if they can.
Yeah. Why do you think that is? I mean, like, I just want to push on it a little bit. So the point we're kind of like one direction we could head in is that not only is this particular argument low-hanging fruit, because it is, but in some ways, this guy is low-hanging fruit. Should someone say something about him? Yeah. Does it take all of this? I don't know, man. After X amount of people, it's like, we get it. The dude sucks. But we keep doing it. So why do we go, you say the easy route, like on like the path of least resistance almost? Like why do you guys think we do that? And I say guys because it's been the Austins, but anybody else, man, feel free. I am interested. Why do we jump at the low-hanging fruit? I'm trying to make an argument here. I could be wrong, by the way. But that would be the beginning of an argument that you're making, that we kind of look for it and go, that guy's a complete dumbass. Hold on. And we go for it. Like, why the enthusiasm to go get people like this?
It's like mob mentality.
Be very careful. Like, that does exist too, especially on social media, especially, but why do we mob around guys like this? What aspects of this dude and people like him encourages that, leads to that?
Kind of feels like deserved towards them.
There's a sense of justice, maybe, in a way. Yeah. Now here again, to be specific, that justice could be accomplished by maybe half the responses it got, right? Like, why do we keep doing it? I guess the point I would be making is, why do we individually want to, I keep saying chime in, but like, be involved? Do you know what I mean? On a personal level, why do we go out and say, oh, I need to retweet or respond to this, or why do you think we do that? Because we do it a lot, I think.
I feel like we have a moral obligation.
That's pretty strong. I mean, what do you mean by that?
I mean, whenever you see everybody else kind of coming out and saying, oh yeah, this dude's terrible, let's like bring to light and let's chastise him for what he's done.
Yeah.
You would almost feel like you're in the wrong if you didn't speak up and put something out there.
To be silent is to be complicit.
Exactly.
In the, yeah. Okay. All right. So we're on the verge of something here. I'm gonna try to. I'm not great at notes on the board, which is a bummer because it's a big part of my job. One idea. Basically. Okay? So what we're arguing, to be clear, we are not arguing that the dude doesn't deserve it. And we are not arguing that Jaden is wrong, which is great because he often is. Go look at anything he says. Wow. But we are saying there's an interesting element involved here, given the argument itself, which we all agree with, I would hope. And the kind of dude we're talking about, who is also an idiot. And I don't think we get much pushback on that. But we're saying not just that we all agree on that, because we do, but that we feel, you said obligated, which is strong. I mean, so I might put with that, but we feel nearly obligated at the very least to step in, to say something, so that we can say, I'm not supporting this guy by not saying anything, right? And we're so worried about maybe getting accused of that we feel compelled to participate. That's a fucking argument. You'd have to prove that. You'd have to talk about that in your paper. Cool. I don't ever see these as erasers. They look like something from space. So let's talk about another one. All we've done at this point, I don't know if that would be a thesis or not. It could be a body paragraph, hard to say. all we talked about was Jaden. Let's talk about Dawson. And I suppose concurrently with his ex-fan. He said he's sorry. I can read some of it for us. Oh, was that good? I've done a lot of things in my past that I hate, that I wish I could make go away. I tried to make go away by deleting videos, untagging in my Instagram, literally doing whatever I can to pretend those things didn't happen. And then later on, well, we already talked about his apology and how he does that, so fair. His ex-fan says, as a viewer, it feels like he's doing everything in his power to say, look guys, I'm not that person anymore, so you have to forgive me, which is an interesting way to think about that. The person goes on to say, he's not acknowledging that he is that person and that he always will be, even if he has changed. So I feel like it's a little more complicated than those quotations put it, given some of the things you guys have said, but I want to talk about those two quotations for a minute. I guess we'll start with the ex-fan, because we talked about the apology and how the assumption is it's disingenuous. We should put that on the board, though, because that's... I'm gonna not be sure how to spell that. That doesn't look right. Oh well. Why do we assume the apology is disingenuous?
Kind of what Austin said, like he's done it so many times, there's so many issues.
Well, not even just him, right? I mean, yes, which would be a problem, but the fact that we as an audience, right, are in a place now, we're experienced enough, we know the playbook, like we've seen it. And again, it is funny. Just go look up, I don't know why you would, apology videos. They all have the like way too close shot and the light is like blaring on their face. They look vulnerable, they look, and they all do that. But we know that there's a playbook that they're following. So much so, well, I was about to give you an argument. I need to pump my own brakes. But because of past apologies, as well as the playbook that we're all aware of, screw up, apologize, screw up, apologize.
Just did a little bit of searching with these people, and I found 4 separate videos, all apologizing for different things from James.
Well, he's very sorry. Anyway, all right. The ex-fan, in some ways, I think encapsulates that response, right? I mean, she for sure. I think it's a she. Well, whoever it is, this person for sure doesn't buy the apology. That's clear, right? Okay. And I would expect, to some degree, it's for similar reasons to the ones we've outlined. But she says a couple interesting things too, right? The most interesting being, and I'm not going to get it quite right, you're still that person even if you've changed. I know why I find that interesting. I'm hopeful you do as well. I'm just curious. What does that mean? You're the same person even if you've changed. That's a weird thing to say. Like on the page, all on its own, it doesn't make any damn sense. Right? So like, what do you think this person is trying to say?
He's not to be forgiven, no matter what he does.
I mean, for sure that. For sure that. Which is actually an idea we haven't quite talked about. We may have time. The idea that some people just aren't, it seems like. Some people, I think, eventually are. And it depends on what they did, and it depends on what they're doing now. But some people kind of just never are, That's true. That's true. But even if he's changed, he's the same person. What could that mean, do you think? Okay. Well, you tried a different way. One way to read it, because I'm honestly not sure, just the fact that this is published like this kind of gives me pause, because I'm like, somebody's not doing their job. If he's changed, she's, or he, again, I don't remember the damn thing, is not going to view him differently, is one way to read this. What does that mean? Like, even if you are a different person. Because, too, the point we brought up at the top of class, this video is almost 10 years old. I don't know if you realize this. When you guys are 30, gross, we'll get that. But other than gross, you're going to be different. You're going to be, some of you will have kids. You'll be totally different people in so many respects. And on the odd occurrence that somebody says, oh, you remember when you were 20 and you blah with the pandas, and you're like, fucking shut up, it's embarrassing. Because you do stupid things when you're this age. That's what you do. You don't usually film it. But this person is saying, no, what you did then, that's who you are now. What is that about? Because I think we do that, right? To a degree. Nothing? Okay. Okay.
She's like not allowing any sort of leeway, as in like a change in maturity or just a change in character overall after this amount of years. Or
Yeah.
like that. So she's basically, she's not giving any wiggle room for
the only example like this I can think of, and it's not the same because every example is a little bit different. Almost every, all right, let me back up. I'm a nerd. I watch the NFL draft. If you don't know what that is, it's hours and hours and hours of millionaires deciding what college kids are going to play on their football team professionally. It's very boring to anyone who's not like me, okay? But I watch it. In almost every year, there's at least one person, it's happened a couple years in a row now, where right before the draft, someone will go through their Twitter and find an old thing and post it. And that person will get crushed online, and then they'll fall in the draft, thereby losing millions of dollars. Like, it's a real thing that happens. And all I'm saying is, we have this mechanism where we go and like dredge up something that someone has done years previous, and then we hit them for it, right? So not entirely similar. The main difference here is it sounds like the Shane Dawson person, it's not like he did one or two things and then he was good from there. But he kind of kept doing those things. But the particular instance we're talking about is about a thing he did almost 10 years ago. Like, I would hope, I could be wrong, but from my perspective, I would hope that we could all admit about 10 years ago is too old to be talking about. Like it's kind of like, that was a really screwed up thing. If he did it now, but you see, like it's. But again, I think this is a thing that we do. We go find transgressions from people's past, and we bring it back. What is that about, do you think? Why are we doing that?
I think more specifically with him,
Yeah.
he's become such a punching bag that people kind of want to look for a reason to come at him with anything they can. Obviously, this is a bit more like, this is worse. But
Yeah. So you're saying, look, all we're doing right now, we're trying to feel out possible arguments. And yours is sort of a continuation of the thing I've erased now, which is great. But this idea that, like, it would almost be a body paragraph if the thing up there earlier was a thesis, right? Like, given the strong desire to bury this guy, and given how easy it is, it's almost like there's blood in the water, if you're familiar with the metaphor, like in those sharks, right? Like we smell that this guy fucked up, that he probably fucked up more. We're gonna go, and we go looking, right? Because it's easy to find, because he's done it. I guess he has a career of it. Is that kind of what you're saying? Yeah. So thereby it allows us more opportunities to you call them punching bag, right? Like more opportunities to get him, basically. That's possible. That could be a body paragraph, potentially. Yeah. Okay. Why else do you think? All right. I'll tell you about one of the examples I'm thinking of. I think it applies. I think it could. A couple years ago, I don't remember the guy's name now. It's Ryan something. He was really good in college, and then he went to the pros, so I forgot his name. But he was getting drafted. He was 20-something, early 20s. And somebody went back through his Twitter and found a post from when he was 13. Apparently he liked a rap song that had some words in it that this little white kid should not be saying. And he said those words on Twitter. Because he was saying the lyrics, right? Like, you understand. Now, should he have done that? No. But he got in some trouble for the thing he said when he was 13. Again, it would have been 9 years previous, because he was 22 when he got drafted. So I'm saying that we do this, where we go and find places you screwed up. We go check your permanent record type of thing. Why are we doing that? Like in Shane Dawson's case, one reason is because he's got seems like a laundry list. Okay. But even if we just consider this one episode, why is anybody going and looking at Shane Dawson's videos from 10 years ago? Why would anyone do that? That's kind of weird, right? Like, just to have the impulse to go look. Why do you think we're doing it? Why are we scouring people's pasts and judging them for it as well? I'll try to invite some of you into the conversation. Have you ever said anything you probably shouldn't have? Maybe when you were like 12 or 13? Is it at least possible you said a thing that wouldn't be great now? Do you hope no one finds out? You know? But they might go look. Why would they do that? But why? Why the impulse even? Like, again, I'm trying to get this back to what she says. I mean, it's this idea that if you ever said it, you are that person in some respect. If it was 10 years ago and you've changed, you're still that person. How? What does it say about us as a people, society, a culture, that I think a lot of people feel that way? You are your past for some reason. Why do you think that is? One idea, I guess, it's got something to do with forgiveness and the lack of it, right? I mean, you mentioned the like going looking because it's easy to do. I mean, that's part of it. But there's something about the desire for justice. I don't remember which Austin it was at this point, but somebody talked about like it being deserved. Do you know what I mean? And we have that, and that's a real thing. But it's also like, I wonder if sometimes we want that justice so badly. as a people, society, and culture, that we almost invent scenarios where it needs to happen. Like in this guy's case, when he was 13 and he said this stupid thing that he never should have said, he was also 13. At best, you're an idiot when you're 20. When you're 13, you're an animal. Like, you're not a human, you know? And short of murder, to hold anybody accountable for what they do when they're fucking 13 is crazy, honest, in my opinion. But we do that. We will do that. Even if it's years later, we will do it. We will find it and punish you. So there's something about this, there's some argument to be made here for the just out and out desire for justice. And all of a sudden, to me, I feel like we're talking about it in a similar way to this desire for unscripted drama, which is to say maybe there's some perceived lack of justice. And I'm not going to talk to you about what that is. You would have to solve for that. But I think it works in a similar way. All right. You guys have hung on for long enough. I feel like some of you are fading pretty fast, to be honest. Here's what we're going to do. First of all, I have a thing to say at you. Before I do that, I want to ask questions, thoughts, concerns, confusions about the paper, anything at all. Borrow my brain for a second. Do you have I'm really fucking good at this. Do you have an idea you'd like to put in front of you? Anything at all? So you all feel really good about your papers? Yeah, what's up?
So I have multiple routes that I can take on mine. It's the Murder docu-series and
Yeah.
So I want to, obviously, I'm trying to keep it to like 2 general points. I want to do the family and friends, how it affects the victims, how it affects them, and then use that. But then there's like another 3, but they're not as strong. You know what I mean?
I kind of did tell you. I would, because I remember you brought this up. Whatever episode you're talking about, you're going to do somebody famous like Dahmer or something, right? I would maybe even entirely focus on the public response. Like, and that may involve the family to a degree. There's going to be people pointing out, like, haven't we talked about Dahmer enough? I know who he is. I don't follow this stuff. Maybe it's time to let that kind of out, escape the public consciousness, you know. And there would be, I would be curious why you think the people that feel that way, you know, maybe that's a body paragraph. But the bulk of us, I think, are like, nah, it's fine. It's fine. And then, of course, the question would be why? Especially if somebody makes the valid point, I think. Is Dahmer one of the guys that ate people? What is? Fuck me. All right. Did he also do like shit to little boys?
Yes.
Fuck.
14.
Oh. Anyway, yeah. So I sent a chill through me. So there's a legitimate argument that I guess some people would make. I would think it's a small percentage though, that what he did was monstrous, and we've covered it, and we could probably stop making shows out of it, right? But then the much larger argument, the much larger contingent of people would be like, but we like it. Isn't that kind of what it is? To me, I think your argument is going to hinge on, you know, we talk about entertainment, but you got to drill down into that. What is entertaining about this? And why is it so entertaining to us, generally, that we look at arguments like, man, he ate those people's kids. You know, we do. We kind of shrug at it. Like, it doesn't... There's an element of that, but I would argue it's almost willful. In a general way, it's almost willful desensitization. Because you want to be entertained, right? And now the question is, well, what are you willing to trade for it? I could be fine with him like fucking and eating kids, which is basically what we're talking about. I can live with that. Those kids can't, but I can. That was a joke, sorry. It says a whole lot about our priorities, you know, what we value. We would tell ourselves, sometimes in all caps, that you shouldn't do those things, right? But if you're gonna make a docu-series about it, watch it. I'm not complicit now, I'm just watching a thing. Isn't that interesting, right? Yeah, there's something there to be, there's a trade-off happening, I think. Perhaps morally, that may be too strong, but there's something about what we tell ourselves we value, we prioritize, as opposed to maybe what we really care about in a meaningful way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Sweet. Other thoughts, questions, concerns, personal victories? Yes, ma'am.
How do you know the person that I'm doing?
Yes.
She's not really famous, or like she's well known, but she's not famous. But she didn't really do anything. But she like shared her experience,
Mm-hmm.
and it got a reaction. I want to know if I can.
What was her, if you could briefly, what's her experience?
She was talking about how, like, as a model,
Okay.
she would get her hair done as like a black model, but nobody knows it how to do her hair, or they will do it wrong, or
Okay.
they just ignore her,
Okay.
stuff like that.
Like the hairdressers would?
Yeah.
Okay. And the response was what? Like what, how did people react to that?
Like you're disappointed, or like,
For her?
well, because it happens a lot.
Okay. I think
with
about
this group of, with this community, it happens a lot.
Yeah. Man, I don't know anything about hair, anybody's hair, but look at me. But okay. So I'm gonna ask you, like, what interests you about that? Like, what do you think you want to focus on in regards to this?
Why they don't have stylists for these type of communities?
Yeah.
Or why the stylists, why are they stylists and they don't know how to do everybody's hair?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, given what we're trying to do in the paper, I mean, I feel you on that. Like, look, I made a mistake of going to my wife's hairdresser once or twice, and she had no idea what to. I didn't realize that like dude hair is different in terms of. I had to have her shave it. Like I was like, just cut it all. I just shave it off. And she was really bummed. Not quite what you're talking about, but not totally dissimilar. But the point I'm making is, there should be. I would imagine there has to be some kind of a public discourse about this. So, for instance, if most people agree with her that it's an issue, I suppose. I mean, we could wonder like how they're going about trying to change that. Maybe like, is it like an education thing, or is it? Does that make a little bit of sense? Like the people that have responded, other than being disappointed in, I guess, the reality of the situation, have they said anything else?
Like people reaction?
Yeah, because that's what we're trying to write about in the paper.
Well, besides, like, it's a mixture between regular people, but mostly other celebrities.
Okay.
They're like experiencing with the same thing.
They've had similar things.
Yeah, but their cases, it might be a little bit worse. Like, it's
Why?
also a racial thing too.
Yeah.
And it hasn't really changed.
Yeah.
Nobody really doing anything about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's super niche just in the way that it's like hairdressers, you know. I would need to know more about, like, so for instance, I mean, this is total hypothetical, but like, we need to know more about the response. If it is just, because it's almost never just one thing, but if it is just supportive and people saying this is the thing we got to figure out, I would still want to know a little bit more about how they're going about that, because sometimes you'll have like movements basically on Twitter, right? Where, especially if celebrities get involved, that gets more eyeballs on it, and then does it seem like anything is actually being done, would be a question. And depending on how that gets answered, now you might have the beginnings of a paper, right? Like that's part of the response, if you follow me. On the flip side, if, to hear you describe it, people have gotten involved, there are more eyeballs on it, and nothing really seems to have changed yet. That's also part of the response. Do you see what I'm saying? So like, if it's more the second one, I mean, it's a troubling argument you would probably end up making, but it's something to the idea of, we have these movements online, we have, even if, you know, celebrities get involved, that brings in a lot of people who show their support, right? Like, we get all that. But then the question becomes, does that support translate to anything? Or does it end up almost like empty promises? Does that make sense? Like, I mean, because this is an idea that we have, that you call it Twitter activism. There's different phrases for it, but there is this notion that like people will totally sit on their couch and say, yeah, we shouldn't do that, and then that's where it stops, right? I think, unfortunately, given how you've talked about it, that might be where your argument lies. Does that help a little bit? Does that make sense? That's a bummer. But and you can for sure find articles about Twitter activism. I can't remember the other phrases now all of a sudden. But you have a lot of this with the bigger movements, especially like Black Lives Matter or Me Too from a couple years ago when that was kicking around. You have a lot of people saying, blah, and then it would only go so far, it seems like, in some cases. So you should, I think, be able to find a whole lot of articles about that, about the issue with Twitter activism and how potent it might actually be. What time is it now? Still can't see that clock. Okay. Other questions, comments, concerns? Great. I do appreciate you guys existing today. There was a lot of existing, so well done there. For next time, I got a couple things I got to say, and then you can go. For next time, I just want to remind you, 2 bibs. The ones we had today were fine. They were a little underdeveloped, but here again, part of that was the articles were short. The student didn't have much to work with, okay? But also, to the best of your ability, try some of this on, if you can, when you're looking at your sources. The worst thing you can do is be wrong in one of your bibs. And it's like, that's fine. Be wrong. But try out some arguments, take some swings. The other thing I want to tell you, and this is important, you want to hear this. I've graded your papers. Oh, I have your attention. I've graded your papers. They're mostly fine, as they often are, okay? You cannot see them yet, so I know some of you are scrambled. You can't see them just yet. As soon as you leave, I will release them, okay? Like doves. You'll be able to see your grade. My feedback to you, just like always, you got your rubric you can look at, which is helpful. What I will tell you, just like the first paper, you can revise your second paper, and just like the first paper, if you do better, your new grade replaces your old grade, okay? So, if you don't like your grade, or if you think you can do a bit better, I happen to believe you could, I would recommend it. The revision will be due 10/28. Is that 2 weeks? Is that right? I'm bad with dates. Go and double check. Frankly, I'm not even sold on this being correct. I wrote it down. I don't trust it. So double check. But I think that's right. All right? Any questions about that before I let you go? Outstanding. I'll see you next week. Thank you.